And it is a very, very hot afternoon here in Tel Aviv. Gabi, who is just actually down the road from me in Modi'in, they're in Park Hamada in Rehovot. I've been seeing the Evogene building for years on my way to clients in Park Hamada. Gabi, welcome to the show. Welcome to Life Sciences Today. My name is Denny Lieberman. I'm the host of Life Sciences Today podcast. So, Gabi, let's start with you telling us about your own personal journey to Evogene. This is not your first rodeo. I count four, maybe five biotech companies on the way.
Sure, and thank you for having me, Danny. It's a pleasure, and hopefully we're gonna have fun. Originally I started off from a scientific background, did my master's and PhD at the Weizmann Institute, and pretty much at the end of my PhD, I understood that research is not my way to go, and industry is the place where I find myself to be much more challenged. So I decided to step out of the academic umbrella and move into the industry, where the first decision was what to do. And being in Israel, there's a lot of options, right? There's a lot of innovation, a lot of things going on. So I really needed to take that time to think about it. And my first transition was to a very early startup that was called Novellus at the moment, at that time, where the focus was on a novel diagnostic tool for cancer patients, for oncology patients, to try to understand what's the best treatment for those patients. That's where essentially I started to really learn what it means to be a biotech entrepreneur. I was the first employee there. The company grew, and along the years, it's actually been quite a ride there. Along the years, it has been shifting focus and size, where at the end of the story, we've been able to essentially get a commercial-ready platform almost up until launch. And that was a place where we essentially understood that the business model was not holding up. We we understood it was in the air, but we essentially understood that developing a novel diagnostic tool is a very, very big hurdle, requires a lot of capital, and the potential upside for the investors was just not making sense. So essentially, we pivoted. The technology was very, very promising, but the use of that technology was not probably clear enough. So we pivoted the company from a diagnostics focus into a drug development focus, essentially flipping the equation. Instead of asking what are the right treatments for a specific patient, asking what are the most relevant patients for treatments we would like to develop. That really shifted our focus and shifted our mindset and allowed us to have, I think, a pretty substantial growth curve, where within 1 year, the company completely changed its activities. We were able to raise a hefty amount of money from VCs, and everything is public. So I can say almost $60 million just on that premise of a drug discovery campaign. And this really allowed us to become a drug development company. My role throughout that journey was always on the scientific, technological side, leading those aspects hand in hand with the business side. We were fortunate enough to be in a situation where oncology, but personalized medicine was really gearing up, and we were at the forefront of that. And that's something that essentially I try to do throughout my career, and maybe when we get to Evogene, we can discuss it, but be at the forefront of precision medicine. And that allowed us to essentially take an asset all the way to phase 2 as an Israeli company, but activities became more and more US-centric. That's where the market is.
Of course.
So the company continued to grow and continued to focus on the clinical development path. And as a research person, as an entrepreneur, it became less and less attractive for me. With the company in good hands, I essentially decided to transition into my next role, where the company is still active, still very, very successful, at least in the way I see it, continuing to recruit patients, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we would be able to have the ability to say that we've essentially brought a new drug to the market to really impact patient lives. It's a very, very long journey, so
Oh yeah.
naturally we're not doing everything, but we were the ones that took a drug off the shelf and put it back into the market and into patients.
That's a super
Uh,
interesting area, by the way. There's a lot of work in FDA on repurposing, and a lot of companies thinking about repurposing, and it's a really interesting approach you've taken.
exactly, and it really goes to show that there's a lot of value to be created there. So following that, that kind of, and this is I summarized an 11-year journey.
Wow.
So it took us a long time to do all of that, all of that development. But it also allowed me to have a very broad understanding and reach across, the different sectors of the drug discovery and drug development process. And I took that into jumping ahead a bit into Evogene, which is where I'm Chief Development Officer for the past almost 2 years now. And Evogene is actually an interesting story because it's not a new company. It's a publicly traded company that's been around for over 20 years, even more, 20,
Yeah, I mean,
20, 20 some years.
I've been in the business for like 20 years. That's about right for me. And every time I would go to the park, to the science park in Rehovot, I would drive past the building on the corner there. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's been around for a while. Wow. So
And
back when drug discovery was called computational biology, right?
exactly. And originally, Evogene spun out of another company called Compugen, also an Israeli-based company that was doing computational biology. But Evogene was focused on taking these approaches into the agriculture sector, which is unique. And the driving force was always technological, was always computational focus, developing computational tools for real world problems, where that grew and grew. And along the way, and that's about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a realization that our best place to be, both from a uniqueness perspective, both from a technological perspective, but also from a market perspective, is in the small molecules field and in computational chemistry. So what we are doing right now is focusing on our computational chemistry platform, which is a discovery stage small molecule engine. And we're doing this for two independent sectors, still one focused on agriculture, which is done through a subsidiary called AgPlenus, and the second with drug development, which is what Evogene is doing by itself. And that's essentially my main day-to-day job. That's my focus. That's what I lead. So in terms of my journey, that's what got me to the podcast today. And happy, to elaborate more if you think, there's specific aspects that I didn't detail enough.
So, I mean, I've heard some people say that everything, of course, is relative in life, but large molecules have been just flying the past several years, and I know that from the perspective of patients, a small molecule is easier to deal with. So, I mean, one of my friends told me the other day, he said, I don't know if there's much headroom in small molecules. I said, I have no idea if you're right. Okay. I have no idea. It's an interesting statement. I said, but I'm going to talk to a guy in a couple of days who probably has a good answer to that provocative question.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because people are saying that for the past 2 decades. Because because every time that a new modality comes in, and it was gene therapy initially, and then RNA-based therapy, and then antibody-based therapy, and currently ADCs are in vogue, antibody drug conjugates. There's always something new coming about. But at the end of the day, when you look at the statistics, the vast majority of the approved drugs today are small molecule based.
Right.
Anything that you take as a pill is essentially not anything, but most of them are small molecules. Um, when you have a headache, you take a small molecule. When somebody has cancer, most of the treatments are going to be small molecule focused. So it's not sexy, it's not new, but it's still the main, as you mentioned, it's still the main and the easiest path forward to target new proteins, new modality, new diseases when they come about. So I completely agree the fact that currently the main
I,
uh, the main focus in terms of treatment types is not on small molecules, but still, if you look at FDA approved drugs, most of them are going to be small molecules.
I did that actually beforehand because after my friend told me what he said, I thought I had no idea if you're right or not. So I looked at the numbers. The numbers, it's still $1 trillion market.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and out of total, it's 60%. In other words, still bigger market than large molecules. So you can say,
Right.
but I said, I told my friend, I'm going to talk to somebody on Tuesday who knows the real, who's going to give me the real stuff on this, not just what you think or what and I'm totally like,
Yeah.
I totally don't know. So, but that makes total sense because at the end of the day, it is easier for a patient to take. Um, so let's talk about um, value creation at Evogene. And I think one of the things that sort of I'm curious about is that on one hand, like you're describing, like my general understanding is that on one hand, it seems like a platform company and less of a product company. And I sort of want to get a better understanding for myself and for our listeners. So, are you a product company? Are you licensing things to other companies? How does it work? What's going on right now?
Yeah. Great question because it's shifting. As originally, Evogene was a platform company that was utilizing its computational tools throughout different sectors via subsidiaries. There's several of them out there. Most of them have actually been progressing very nicely. Uh, One of them is, and besides one, all of them were in the agriculture sector. But the major understanding was that most of the value to be created in the drug development field is actually through the products and not through the technology. So what we are doing right now is very actively pursuing a pipeline approach, which means that what we think about as the assets are the small molecules themselves, are the preclinical and hopefully clinical candidates that we would be moving forward. And this is done both in a collaborative manner, in a partner-oriented approach, but also internally through internal assets that we identify, research, and progress. So we started off as a technology company, but now we are more and more so becoming a classical biotech with a pipeline, with assets, and with indications that we have in mind.
That makes sense. Actually, that's the direction that Daphne Koller's company took. That's the direction
Yeah,
that another Israeli company that was on my podcast, Prot AI took. That
right.
they're a drug company basically. That's what Kirill told me. So it makes total sense. And you want to move up, get closer to the clinic,
Yeah, exactly.
as close as
Exactly.
you can to the clinic. Um, so tell me a bit about the business model. What VC people call value capture. Okay, tell me all about value capture. Don't say numbers. Okay, I don't want to know
Yeah,
that every license costs $57, and if you buy two of them, you can get two with 50% off on the second one. I don't want to know that. First of all, you're a
right.
publicly traded company. Second of all, because more interesting the design pattern you follow to in your value capture. Tell me about that.
Definitely. And as you mentioned, we try to capture the value through the IP around the assets and through the potential upside with the commercialization of those molecules, right? Which is a long-term goal. It takes several years, but it's still somewhere where we're seeing a lot of um we think we would be able to succeed to have a lot of success in doing these development programs. And in that sense, we fall into the classical drug development value capture model, where essentially you take your asset as far along as you can, and then usually partner up with the more well-established drug development companies, pharma companies, the bigger ones, which are able to do the phase threes and then commercialization. And that's where their main advantages lie. So in that sense, we're thinking about this the same way. We are very early on in the process, as we are just about 2 years into our drug development story. So our programs are still discovery stage, but we are moving forward very quickly. And maybe we can discuss technology a bit later, especially around the mode. But AI is really shifting the way things are happening, really accelerating the processes that people were classically considering to be years and years of drug development processes. So we think that this unique junction between computational science, AI-based computational science mostly, the potential to bring new drugs to the market, which are small molecule based, not sexy, but still the mainstay of drug development. And Evogene's long history in commercialization and in really developing products can give us, I think, a lot of motivation and places to be optimistic about our success rate, about our possibility of success rate, successfully completing this.
Excellent. I was So that actually naturally, in a very, very natural kind of way, that brings me to the moat question, which is
Yeah,
also a VC kind of question. Now I had Tiffany Callahan on the show a couple months ago. She's no longer at Sandbox AQ, but Sandbox AQ is a company that's spun out of Google, and their mode is that they're solving an incredibly difficult problem. And what they do is they basically model things at the atomic level. Okay, so that's like, wow, that's like a physicist's wet dream, right? Let's model things at the level of atoms, okay?
yeah.
I told Tiffany I can really get into that. But so what's your moat?
Great question. Uh, Essentially, I think there's two levels to it. There's the technological perspective to it, and there's the way we try and translate that into commercial terms. So technologically, the way we've developed Campus AI, which is our computational chemistry or computer-aided drug design discovery engine, is that we've based it on our internal unique generative model, which essentially writes molecules. Right? It's amazing, right? You give it data, it writes drugs in very simple terms. So it's generative, it's pretty much like ChatGPT and the others, but it is chemistry focused from day one. So it's really geared towards solving small molecule based discovery problems. And I think more so it is what we like to call constraint-based generation, which means that for every molecule that needs to be developed, there's a certain number of parameters of criteria that it needs to meet in order to be a successful drug. They are physical, chemical, biological, clinical sometimes, regulatory other times, but there's this specific set of criteria that you need to answer. And successfully optimizing your molecule for all of that criteria de-risks the program and essentially increases the probability of successful development. While all of the other models that we know of generate and then filter to find the best suited molecules for that project specific requirement. We flip that and we do the generation in a constraint-based manner. That dramatically increases the accuracy of our generation, and that essentially ensures that the molecules that are generated really fit the required parameters very, very well.
What kind of
And
constraints? So, I mean,
it
when you
can
say,
be physical. So, for example, the size of the molecule. It can be chemical. How soluble it is. If you need it to be orally bioavailable versus topical use, so it's a very different constraint. Within the body, if you need any specific safety issues to be addressed, any ADME, so the metabolism of the drug is something that is very many times critical. What we're seeing more and more is that, for example, some drugs need to go into the brain. So blood-brain barrier penetrance is
right.
critical. That's another constraint that many times needs to be considered. And the list goes on and on. And our advantage is that coming from the chemistry side, we are essentially tapping or coding this understanding into the algorithm itself. And that constraint-based generation is what allows us to be very accurate in our molecules. And that translates into a very high success rate of generating the right molecules and decreasing the amount of time you need to spend on your DMTA cycles, on your design, make, test, analyze cycles, and moving forward much quicker. The way we translate.
How long does it take to set up an experiment like that? When you're writing a prompt for a large language model, you can write a prompt in a minute. But it must take time to set up an experiment like that.
So that's the nice thing about it is that Campus AI as a technology engine is set up as a workflow, and everything is essentially already calibrated for the researchers to do this very quickly. So that allows us to start off with a target and get out at the end of the process with a novel molecule. And we've been able to show that we can do this in under 18 months. So a year and a half.
But no, that's the process. But how long does it take to set up the
exactly.
process?
So I'm kind of
Working
working backwards.
Yeah.
If that's the time it takes to do the entire process, then naturally the last step does not take a long time. And it's I think it's that way because we have in-house all of the people that essentially do the process also algorithmically. We have mathematicians, computer science people, algorithm people that are actually writing the code, but also researchers that are using it. So the interface is very, very intimate, and it allows us to do problem solving and development in a very, very I think agile way.
What are you doing? You're writing Python code or you have your own language?
I'm a biologist, so I'm not really doing anything of that sort, but what the teams are
No,
doing.
I'm saying, when I think about setting
Yeah,
up an experiment,
they're actually hard coding it into the system. Yeah, the development people that we have. And that's one of the main advantages of being in Israel as well, is that the technology ecosystem is booming, and that essentially is what allowed us to have two very successful collaborations with Google, the local teams, the R&D teams with Google, which one of them was to train a novel foundation model around that's the basis of our generative engine. And the second is to develop novel agentic-based tools to even further further scale the processes that we are developing. Again, something which I think is unique to a small place like Israel, that everybody knows everybody. And it's really easy to do innovation. But going back into the uniqueness, while the technological aspect is, I think, interesting, I think more relevant is how we are translating this into real world problems. And that kind of ties into the types of projects and the type of targets that we are able to pursue. And these are the more challenging problems, challenging targets, meaning very hard starting points for the protein. So usually, the way we like to term it on our terms is no crystal structure, no available structural data at all, even. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that molecular glues being an up and coming treatment modality, I would say, is something that really benefits from the capabilities of what we are doing. So that's also something that we are very actively researching.
Well, so I mean, this has come up several times in other shows, which is there is a tendency. I heard this from people from Switzerland also. So I'm going to make a very gross kind of generalization, which is total BS, but it's basically what people were saying, the Swiss people and Israelis were saying is that the Swiss and the Israelis like to do science, okay? And they're less concerned about how it's going to be sold 5 years down the line. So they're more interested in doing fun science projects. Okay, this two people told, actually 4 or 5 people told me this. Okay, they're the and two Swiss people told me this also. So the Swiss and the Israelis have something in common. Okay. Which is that they sort of believe, and again, what I'm about to say is a gross generalization, and don't take it as personally at all. But it's like these people are saying, oh yeah, Swiss and Israelis like to do basic science, and they don't care about the commercialization. That's someone else's problem. So what can we say to that? Okay, you know,
I think at the basis of everything is innovation, right? Without innovation, it's really hard to move things forward. But the realization of uh, um, seeing down the line how this really meets the market and is able to bring value is critical, and it needs to be integrated from day one, right?
right.
There's no sense. We're not academic. We're not academic in the academy. We don't need to do just research for the sake of research. We need to do research for the sake of actually making a difference in terms of market share or any other data point that you like to kind of reference to as value creation. So that's a maturity level that industry needs to get at a certain point to really be able to show that. And going back to the high-tech industry in Israel, I think we are seeing that maturity come into play, and bigger companies are being formed. The biotech industry within Israel has always kind of, and I think that's the difference between Switzerland and Israel, because Switzerland essentially is based in the global hub of pharma companies,
Oh
which,
yeah, it's like the Jerusalem of life science. Okay,
exactly, right?
you go to Basel, and Novartis is over here and Roche is over here. That's like, it's like, Panovich and Mir, right? So it's like
Exactly. So you have that starting point, which in Israel we don't have, and we need to mature towards that. And it takes time. It takes a lot of infrastructure, which is something on the national scale, not on the local scale. So, it's something that I can less maybe kind of speculate, but I can't really speak of. And it's places that the industry needs to get to in terms of maturity of that industry. We have big companies. We have Teva as a big company, but it's a different flavor of drug development, I would say. So yeah, I think innovation is critical. I think having a clear path forwards to commercialization is critical just as much. And you can say it's fun to have innovation for the sake of innovation when you cross the street and you reach Novartis headquarters.
right.
In Israel, it's different. We need to have that that path forward in mind from day one.
Yeah, that's fine. So actually, uh, people have now been when I started talking about this on the show with people, then I started hearing the idea from more than one founder slash CEO is that you should start by writing the label. And
Yeah. If you know you're gonna change it, then yeah, no problem. But if you think that's gonna be it, yeah, no, good luck.
yeah, that's right. It's kind of like a simplistic, but
Yeah,
there's a certain elegance in that kind of a pattern.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, before we hit the surprise question, I'd love to hear from you, Gabi, as the CTO of Evogene. Is what are three things you want to do for your customers in the next 12 months?
So I'll start by reframing the question because we don't think of customers, we think of partners that we co-develop with. So it's not the
Partners.
same approach, right? But still, I think what we really are aiming at is just capping it at three, is first of all, on the research side, being able to deliver innovation, continue to deliver innovation through our R&D to make sure that our technological engine remains at the forefront of the industry. And that's very actively being done, and we've shown that to be true in the past few years, and we just want to make sure that we don't lose that. I think the second is to be able to really mature the programs that we have into preclinical stage, moving it from what we are doing as a discovery company into actual preclinical studies that are already moving into the IND stage and the clinic.
Into the clinic, right?
Exactly. And the third one is, I think, allow ourselves to increase the profile of the projects that we are doing in the sense that we are carving ourselves that, I would say, perception in the industry of what Evogene is really able to achieve. So that's more of maybe a marketing issue, but it's something that is done through our collaborations, through our activities with the partners, in the sense that the more we are able to showcase success, the better perception we would be having in the industry, and that essentially would be opening up for us more and more doors, right? So yeah,
So understanding that success breeds success, it's something you want to keep your eye on
exactly.
this next
Yeah,
12. That's
yeah.
really, yeah, it makes so much sense. Um, well, so we're getting towards the end of the show, and I have, slow drum roll.
I'm
I
gonna be
have
surprised.
I have a
Is this a
surprise question.
surprise?
I have a surprise question for you. And the surprise question is, what is the biggest anti-pattern in your industry?
Um, it's a tough question because first of all, maybe you can start with framing the word industry, and then the anti-pattern would be maybe more relevant because the drug development industry is immense, and I don't think we can take on ourselves to at least me specifically. I'm kind of I'm humbled by the question of what is the anti-pattern in the drug development industry. I think it's just too big. So maybe focusing more on the discovery stage,
Let's say, what's the
which
biggest
is
end? So again, I don't make the rules. Okay. You
right.
decide what the industry is, you decide what the anti-pattern is. You could say that your industry is the code that people have to write
Yeah.
what to do these.
So I think if we're focusing in industry and more so in the discovery phase and computational tools for discovery phase, which is a very active area anyhow, I think the perception of AI will solve it for me
Yeah.
is a real problem because there's a very old saying, you probably know it, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Oh, yeah.
You always need to know what you're doing, and just kind of making the claim, oh, I'm using AI tools, so it's got to be right. Um, that's a way that probably would not lead you to success because, first of all, critical thinking is key, and at least the way we use AI is understand the problem, define the problem, and find the best tool to solve it. It can be AI based, it can be other tools, but we think of AI as a tool rather than the solution. And I think that's a major aspect of, as you like to call it, and I like the term anti-pattern. I think that's something which I think is major in our industry.
So let me be provocative. Okay, so I've been around tech for a long time, and I can tell you one thing for sure is that big tech, we're talking companies like Google and Facebook, they have a perfect track record with life science, and the track record is perfect because it's zero. Okay, they've been perfectly failures. Okay, they've not succeeded any that includes Microsoft, that includes Google. Facebook hasn't gotten there, so I guess Zuck doesn't think it's something he wants to try out. But now we have Anthropic, okay, that they announced a week or two ago that they're going into drug discovery. I'm looking at that and I'm scratching my head and I say, what the fuck do they think? Okay.
So I think, and you made a comment before we started about being a physicist and having a model at the lowest scale possible as your kind of wet dream. So I think technology going into life science is maybe a similar approach, but a much more complex situation because essentially nobody understands biology. And making the claim that you understand what's going on in the human body and why that drug or another drug would be better than it's just historically it's never worked, right? Nobody really is able to predict what would be the success rate of a specific drug. That's why we do clinical trials. That's why there's a long process involved. And I think that just computer models, just doing everything in silico, so to speak, is a bit out of reach at the moment for life sciences, just because of the complexity of the problem. And we need to be coming into the, we need to be conscious of that. And once you're conscious of that issue, then I think it drives your actions much clearer than just writing code and saying, well, that should work.
Plus, I have to say this is just looking at this whole story, it seems like more of a PR story than a real story. But our language model is totally unfit to solve computational chemistry problems. And it's not, large language model is about piecing, predicting the next word pattern. That's basically what it does. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's absolutely nothing to do with language. It has everything to do with chemistry and the atoms under the chemistry and the physics behind the whole thing and interactions. And there's a huge amount of knowledge here, which is totally not about large language models. So do you agree with that? Or is that like,
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree with that. I think that's why, and I hinted it, but that's why Evogene, as coming from the chemistry side and not from the algorithmic side, um, is I wouldn't say unique, but is probably the better way to go about it because we understand the problems and we're able to fit the solutions to the actual problem and not just kind of force our way through the available computational solutions. That's what so the example with Google was that we needed a foundation model to train our generative model, our generative algorithm.
uh,
So, Google is a tech company, so that's why they know how to do data. They know how to do a lot of that infrastructure side. We came with the scientific aspects and kind of that combination was really very successful. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that at the end of the day, uh, good old classical biological thinking is still important. And in that sense, AI and computer science is augmenting what we do significantly. But I think it's still going to take some time until we are completely hands-free from these tasks.
if ever.
Yeah, I don't want to be, this is on record, so I don't want any quote to come out a few years
No,
ago.
no,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
wondering. Okay.
No, yeah, but I think it is a very complex task. That's why. And if you look at it, by the way, pharma companies have much higher volumes and make much more money than the tech companies. When you think about the market itself,
Oh
right? So
yeah,
it's
for
still a
sure.
bigger market, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, regardless.
So that's a good reason to move up the food chain, isn't there? So,
Exactly, exactly.
wow, amazing. So I want to thank Gabi, Chief Development Officer of Evogene, for being my guest on the show. My name is Danny Lieberman. I'm the host of Life Sciences Today, and I want to thank publicly Aviva Sapir for quarterbacking this for us. And it's been a pleasure, Gabi. Thanks so much. Next time we'll be face to face and have a cold beer.
Perfect. Thank you very much.